Imagine a king so utterly unsuited for his throne, so absorbed in his own passions, that he was dismissed by history as simply boring. Yet his reign culminated in a deposition so shocking and a death so gruesome, it fundamentally reshaped the very concept of monarchy. You think you know him? You don't. Prepare to uncover the true story of King Edward II, the most punishingly misunderstood case in history. You don't get it. In the sprawling tapestry of English monarchy, King Edward II often occupies a peculiar, almost embarrassing footnote. Sandwiched between his formidable warrior father, Edward the Fester, the Hammer of the Scots, and his glorious son, Edward III, the Victor of Crécy. Edward II is frequently dismissed as a weak, effeminate, and utterly ineffective ruler. His reign, at first glance, seems to be a catalogue of military failures and political mismanagement, punctuated by an unconventional personal life. History, it seems, has deemed him less a king and more a political inconvenience. But to dismiss Edward II as simply boring or ineffective is to profoundly miss the true, horrifying, and utterly transformative significance of his story. His was arguably the most punishing case in English royal history, a saga of personal failings leading to an unprecedented downfall that shook the foundations of medieval kingship. His reign, though often overlooked, was a crucible of constitutional and political change, setting a chilling precedent for future monarchs who dared to defy the will of their powerful nobility. It's a tragic tale of a man fundamentally unsuited for his throne, whose personal choices had devastating political consequences, culminating in a brutal end that forever altered the course of English history. The boring king, unconventional interests, and political ineptitude. Edward II, reigned 1307 to 1327, inherited a kingdom shaped by his strong-willed father, a monarch obsessed with military conquest and efficient governance. Edward II, however, possessed a radically different temperament. He displayed a disinterest in the traditional pursuits of medieval kingship, warfare, administration, and grand political maneuvering. Instead, he favored more common activities: ditch digging, swimming, farming, thatching roofs, and working with common laborers. Such pastimes were considered deeply undignified for a monarch. His greatest political weakness, however, was his persistent and overwhelming reliance on personal favorites, male companions, over the traditional and established nobility of the realm. This alienated the powerful barons, setting the stage for fatal conflicts. The punishing case begins: Piers Gaveston and the Baron's Fury. The most infamous of Edward's early favourites was Piers Gaveston, a Gascon knight whom Edward made Earl of Cornwall. Their relationship was intensely close and deeply controversial. Gaveston, arrogant and dismissive of the English nobility, quickly accumulated immense wealth and power, infuriating the powerful barons who saw him as an upstart outsider manipulating the king. The barons repeatedly forced Edward to exile Gaveston, only for the king to defy them and recall his favourite. This cycle of defiance and rebellion destabilized the realm. In 1312, in an act of unprecedented defiance, the barons, led by the ruthless Earl of Lancaster, captured and summarily executed Gaveston without the king's consent or a legal trial. This was an open, armed rebellion against the crown, an early and chilling sign of the monarchy's crumbling authority. The aftermath of Gaveston, the Despensers' rise and royal isolation. Gaveston's death devastated Edward, but he seemingly learned nothing. He quickly replaced Gaveston with a new set of favourites: Hugh Despenser the Younger and his father, Hugh Despenser the Elder. The Despensers proved even more grasping and ruthless than Gaveston, consolidating vast lands, wealth and power, and ruthlessly trampling over the rights and properties of other nobles. Their insatiable greed alienated virtually every remaining faction of the English aristocracy. Edward's political weakness and his utter inability to control his new favorites or unify his realm led to a complete breakdown of governance and a profound isolation from his own nobility and, crucially, his queen. The ultimate betrayal, Isabella and Mortimer. Edward's greatest downfall would come from within his own family. His long-suffering wife, Queen Isabella of France, sister of the French king, grew increasingly disgusted by Edward's neglect, his obsessive reliance on the Despensers, and the increasing humiliation she endured. In 1325, Isabella traveled to France on a diplomatic mission. There, she formed a powerful, scandalous alliance with Roger Mortimer, a powerful English baron whom Edward had exiled. Their relationship, both political and likely romantic, became the ultimate threat to Edward's throne. In 1326, Isabella and Mortimer, backed by French support and joined by a coalition of disaffected English nobles, launched an invasion of England. The kingdom, utterly alienated by Edward and the Despensers, offered little resistance. The Deposition, an unprecedented act. Edward II was captured and imprisoned in January 1327. What followed was an act of truly revolutionary significance for English monarchy. His deposition. Under immense pressure from Isabella and Mortimer, Parliament was assembled. On January 21, 1327, Edward II was declared unfit to rule due to his alleged incompetence, tyranny through the Despensers, and failure to govern effectively. This was a groundbreaking act, unprecedented in English history, that explicitly stated a king could be removed by his subjects for misrule. This bold, shocking assertion of parliamentary and baronial power fundamentally changed the relationship between the crown and its subjects, setting a terrifying precedent. The horrific end, murder at Berkeley Castle, 1327. Despite his deposition, Edward II remained a dangerous living claimant to the throne, a potential rallying point for royal loyalists. Isabella and Mortimer knew he could not be allowed to live. On the night of September 21, 1327, in Berkeley Castle, Edward II met his horrific end. The widely believed account, recorded by chroniclers like Geoffrey Le Baker, states he was brutally murdered, held down, and impaled through his anus with a red-hot poker. The intention was to kill him without leaving external marks, thus making his death appear natural. This barbaric method was not just sadistic, it was symbolically punishing. It was a deliberate, agonizing act of regicide intended to shame and destroy him in a manner seen as fitting for a king perceived as unmanly and unnatural in his affections and governance. You don't get it. The profound impact and legacy. Edward II's story is far from boring. It is a gripping, tragic, and profoundly consequential tale, a terrifying precedent. His deposition and gruesome murder established a horrifying precedent. An English king could be forcibly removed and brutally killed by his own subjects for failing to rule effectively. This would echo through later dynastic conflicts like the Wars of the Roses. Shifting power dynamics. His reign was a crucible for the ongoing power struggle between the crown and parliamentary baronage, fundamentally altering the balance of power. The cost of unconventionality. Edward's unconventional interests and his stubborn reliance on unpopular favorites directly led to his catastrophic downfall and horrific demise. His personal failings had devastating political consequences. A monarch's duty. His life serves as a stark reminder that medieval kingship was not just about inheriting a crown, but about fulfilling demanding political, military, and social duties that Edward was tragically unwilling or unable to perform. Edward II's reign, often dismissed, was a brutal and transformative period in English history. His personal tragedy became a pivotal moment in the evolution of the monarchy, demonstrating that even a king's perceived boring characteristics could lead to the most shockingly punishing case imaginable. You don't just get Edward II from a cursory glance. His story requires a deep dive into the very heart of medieval power, betrayal, and violence.